from because I've heard it before, and I just pulled it up, and Chris Calico.
Okay.
Yeah, 2009. I'm sorry, 2009. The song is called Genius. And they took that for the theme song.
Hey, let's go upstairs.
There. Oh, nice to see you too.
Yeah, hear this for a second.
They're not going to be on the show?
Hold on.
They could be done out here as long as they don't bother us. I've never heard that. On an Apple commercial.
Oh, I don't really have an opportunity to get
That's
a lot
the
of
clip they
commercials
took.
either.
And when I heard it, I mean, I've been hearing the commercial like a billion times on TV because it's on TV a lot. All they're promoting is it's iPhone 16. And I'm like, I've heard this song before, and I'm like, genius. Sure enough, yeah, Chris Calico from 15 years ago. Guy probably made no money.
Yeah, probably.
You know, he wasn't like a big mainstream rapper, but they took the one
Well,
song.
aren't you insistent? I'm
I
busy.
can imagine
I'm
what kind of
trying to
royalties he's getting.
Get some thoughts together, guys.
Unless he doesn't own his masters.
Brian just opened a mobile dog grooming business. So if you ever need
And
your...
pet sitting and dog walk.
Oh, that's right. Yes. I should-
Okay.
So if you ever need your dog groomed, you know, he'll be in our driveway all the time.
So did you send Briar my way, or did she find her way to us?
I didn't send her your way.
No, you or Sarah didn't?
No.
Okay. I just thought that was pretty ironic. Out of all of the groomers
It
in
is.
Wisconsin, that she's the one who.
She just cut Veda's hair like last week.
Okay.
And Sarah, at the end of it's like, yeah, I might see you working for my husband's friend pretty soon. And she's like, oh. Like, I thought that was good.
Oh,
So,
we need the muffs.
yeah, I got...
See how this sounds.
So what's the like? So like, is your approach like we're watching the screen, or are we watching each other? Like, are we having a conversation like in a Joe Rogan kind of style, or Lex Friedman kind of style?
It's
or
really
are
up to you. I mean, I think for the most part, we can do this and look
Yeah.
at each other and talk.
I think it gets weird otherwise if you're like
Yeah.
if you're doing the commentator thing.
Yeah.
That's just goofy.
I mean, sometimes people like to, you know, look directly at the camera and,
Stare into the lens.
you know, it depends on what kind of podcast, right? Like, I watch a ton of podcasts, and there's ones that are like, they're looking right at the camera and they're trying to tell their audience something, right? Whereas, like, for the most part, we're just sitting around having a convo, you know?
Yeah. I liked what you guys had done with like the living room
Chairs.
format.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and what I was considering doing,
Oh, now I see. I can hear you so much better now.
Isn't that better?
it makes it so much easier when you have these on.
That's that AI.
It sounds, now it sounds like a podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like you gotta have. We learned this in the first couple that we did. You gotta have your mic pretty close to your mouth
Pretty
for
much.
it to.
That's why you see
Yeah.
them like
Not in your
always-
mouth, just close to
Yeah,
it.
I mean, like, yeah, you're good,
Yeah.
kind of where you're at.
A little
But
bit.
with these microphones too, the best is talking straight into the tip,
Correct.
just the tip,
Just talking to the tip, huh?
just the tip, buddy.
Nothing else.
Yeah,
Good advice. Okay.
The tip's enough.
Oh, yeah, that's I sound a lot better that way. I sound better than I do in real life.
you
That's
sound
pretty
good.
cool.
You sound
That's
good.
pretty cool.
I remember Trump said no tax on tips. He did say that, no tax on tips.
Oh shit, we're live right now, and we're still looking at the cameras. That's all right. We'll edit it out at some
Okay.
point if we need to.
Oh, we're not doing this like
Alright,
live. Like
We
for
are
yourself?
live
Oh,
right
okay.
now.
Yeah.
We are live. We are on.
Uncut and undrugged.
Oh, we are. I don't know about undrugged, but I was gonna bring some down here for us actually, if anybody wanted a taste test. But yeah, we are live on Twitch. We're live on Twitter. We're live on Rumble and
MySpace?
MySpace.
Gotcha,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Oh, and YouTube. And YouTube, of course.
Yeah, I told Jamie she wasn't allowed to join the live because she'd be heckling too much.
We need somebody to watch and like chat or
a little
something.
bit of,
you
a little
know?
bit of comedy.
A little heckling might actually be good, huh?
And then there we go. Yeah, so we are live. You can see us going. It sounds okay. This is obviously delayed, but yeah,
That's definitely a
just wanted to make sure that can see everything's all good.
improvement in quality over your, each one, right?
That's right, and
Something like that, yeah.
and for anybody watching or you guys even to know, like, this is a little bit difficult because I'm a speaker and I'm also the producer right here.
And the
I'll say.
engineer.
Well, and like, I'm the one that's gonna have to be flipping between cameras. So when I start talking, I'll flip to me. When Tim starts talking, I'll flip to Tim.
Don't do that.
You know,
Well,
Brian.
you said the kids don't have school tomorrow. Can't one of them come down here and work the technology for you?
They're too young.
Too busy on TikTok.
I'm sure
I
they'd
know.
probably be better at it than you are.
Kenna would be just like pressing buttons like crazy. Wes would actually probably be okay at it, but he couldn't pay attention that long. But anyways, we are live. We can always edit this when I, upload it or do whatever. But for the most part, we just do this for fun. And I always tell everybody that I find this incredibly therapeutic.
Indeed.
In a weird way.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I feel like I almost get done with a therapy session. So, I don't know. It's fun. And even if no one ever watches this, I don't give a shit. It's fun.
Hey, I shared it with a bunch of guys that I was together with last night. So who knows? Maybe there'll be
Yeah,
a couple of
maybe
visitors and
maybe they'll tune in. There is a screen where we can see, like, if anyone comes in, or right there, like anyone comes in any of the channels and chats. And we have one viewer right here, which was probably just me before. But this is the multi-stream chat. Yeah, there we go. So we can check that every once in a while. The other thing that I did that's a little bit different and a little bit cool this time is, like, if you guys ever want to look anything up, I can easily, like just Drudge Report, for example, I can easily switch. That's right. All right.
I just noticed as if we're drinking, it picks up on that really, really well as well.
Yeah, it does a little bit. I'm
The
also
drinking?
still dealing with a little bit of a post-nasal drip thing from allergies that are still kicking around here. So for me, if I got a cough, that's what it's from. That's it. I've had this thing for 6 weeks, so it just keeps it's lingering.
It is that season.
I was wondering if we were gonna have some issues because we're, like, so close with our microphones.
You mean
but
feedback-wise, or
I don't know, but it seems as though it's not really
everything seems good?
doing anything.
Hey, we got a special guest in the house. Oh, it's
Yeah.
Wes.
Hey, buddy. Go upstairs by mommy, okay? All right, bye, buddy. He's addicted to that Nintendo, dude. All right, cool. Well, everyone, welcome. Welcome to Roger That. This is our 4th time doing this. The last time we did this was May 7th, I think the date was.
A little bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, I mean, it was,
Life gets in the way.
life gets in the way. It was 5 months ago almost, but happy to be back.
And we got a new friend.
And we got a new guy
See?
here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, Brian. Everyone, this is Brian. Brian, why
Hi, I'm
don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Brian.
Tell us what you do.
So I've known Adam for many years. Worked together for a lot of years back in the day at Dedicated Computing, and I made the mistake of asking what happened to the podcast, and somehow I found my butt in this chair. So looking forward to having a chat.
What do you do professionally now, Brian?
Okay, well, so this podcast is brought to you by Wolfies of Greendale Waukesha. No, maybe not really. No, my wife and I just actually was something we wanted to talk about tonight. It was kind of our all of us, or a couple of us, have gone into entrepreneurial journeys. Or actually, Tim, I think you did too. Started something, right?
I do have something, yes.
So my wife Jamie and I just kicked off Wolfies in southeastern Wisconsin. So we do pet sitting, dog walking, and mobile grooming. Across basically from Oak Creek at the lake out to Pewaukee Lake.
Very nice.
And I've used Brian's company already. I was a guinea pig, and the guy did absolutely fantastic. And he hired him after that. So I'm looking forward to utilizing your business from here on out.
No, I appreciate the support.
But I heard you gave him a 1-star review on Google. No?
I should. I'll be the first to review it, yes. No, everyone. Tim, why don't you quickly introduce yourself to anyone that might not know you? And first
nobody wants to know me anyways.
Everyone knows you, man.
It's been that way for 43 years. Yeah, no, Tim, neighbors here with Adam right here in our own subdivision. We've been neighbors now for 7+ years since building my humble abode that long ago. And industry that I'm in is pharmaceutical. So, yeah, pretty much leave it at that. Everybody on the line. If there is anybody on the line, probably either is giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that one.
Yeah, you probably really want that Bobby Kennedy to get in there with Trump and
I like the guy.
Maha, right? Make America healthy
Yeah,
again.
I actually like the guy for different reasons. He's got, I think, aspects about him that are intriguing and even somewhat captivating. I don't think I'd agree with him on probably 95% of the things that he probably believes in, but there are some aspects, no doubt. I just think he's just a solid dude in many ways, but I'm sure he's got some skeletons in the closet like most Kennedys.
He's a odd guy in some respects if you hear some of the stories from back in the day.
And I had to look up the other day. He's got that voice issue where it's very shaky, trembly, kind of high pitched.
Right.
There's an actual condition for it. I forgot what it's called. A big term, kind of a rare disease of sorts.
Very rare. Yeah.
But I was wondering what it was because I'm like, what would cause someone to have that kind of tone when they speak?
Yeah.
It's very unique. Very unique. He's got a very unique sound to him.
Because it sounds like he's almost scared when he talks, but he's not. I mean, he's very confident. Matter of fact, he's incredibly eloquent. Like, you listen to him speak, he knows what he's saying. He's got a good command of the language, and certainly whatever topic he's engaging in, he knows his stuff.
Hey.
That's Adam,
So what
by
is
the
it?
way.
Yeah. So what does this say that Remy and Vita are like? They just love me, I guess.
Yeah, they must.
It's probably
know,
because I'm not.
they know you're
I'm
in
not
the
ignoring
business.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, they know you're in the business. They're like, this guy has to pass, or else we're not going to trust him.
Doggy dollars.
Remy's pretty aggressive. She's kind of like, hey,
Yeah,
you can't ignore me.
yeah. I know. She just gets right up in there. All right, cool. And me, Adam, I don't do all that much as of right now. My wife and I run an event venue here in Wisconsin. I was studying for quite some time to be a lawyer. Didn't get into law school this last year, which pretty disappointed of. But going to continue trying that, and then try to get in September of next year. But at the same time, also just working with some family and whatnot on some potential developments of, possible subdivisions or condos or something of that nature. Trying to keep myself busy. Because as one of the topics that I don't know if I shared this one with you, Tim, but I shared it with Brian, is that we want to talk about tonight is just corporate culture world and getting out of the corporate culture world and how you feel when you're in the corporate culture world, which, can lead to a lot of different things, but got out of the corporate culture world like, a year and a half ago. And I don't really want to go back at all. I guess we can jump into that right now since we're all introduced. But I guess I'll start by saying this on the corporate culture front. I was fired from a company a year and a half ago about a year now, actually. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me at that company. That company was absolutely horrendous. It was terrible. I've never been in a corporate culture like that before. There was shit talking, there was backstabbing, there was just plain lying. There were people there that should have been fired for outrageous things, many, many times, that continued to stay there. And then, if they would ever, if anyone would ever come to them and tell them that you're going to be let go, they, would say that they're going to sue the company for sexual harassment or whatever it may be. I mean, it was just absolutely terrible. And I have been scorned by that particular job and corporate culture ever since. Scorned / scarred, I should say. And when my wife and I talk about me going back to work, I'm just like completely like, no, I'm never going to go back to the corporate culture world again. I don't want to, at least. Never say never. But you know, it's something I never really do want to do. And we have our own business, the wedding venue. It's awesome to have your own business. But, you know, prior to that, I worked at Dedicated Computing for, 12 years. And that was a pretty good gig where it went through, 8 different roles, had a ton of different responsibilities, learned a ton. It wasn't like, there's always things you point out that were bad about it, we'll say, that I didn't like. And Brian worked with me there. But it was nothing like the last company that I was at, where it was just terrible. I mean, just completely awful.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think something that's interesting about our shared experience way back then was, I think we were very blessed to be working for a company that was, kind of started small, and
Right.
Was going through a growth phase. But we were at a point in our careers where, and we happened to have a leadership team that kind of embraced our ideas. Actually, I don't know why they listened to us and gave us a chance to try some new things, but a lot of it did work, some of it didn't. But there was kind of that culture of, hey, it's okay to bring up an idea, and it's not the end of the world if one of those ideas doesn't work.
Right.
You can make a mistake. All right, well, now let's adjust. Let's go try something else and see if this other idea will get that on track. And to your point, I think we learned a ton. The culture was pretty good. It was kind of that kind of culture, innovation and creativity and experimentation. But I think maybe what you and I both learned in some of that experience was how important that culture is.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, what changed wasn't products. It wasn't even processes. It was culture as leadership changed over. And I think that's the thing I've seen or that I've learned. And I want to say in my career, things aren't perfect, but I'm very grateful for my professional career, because I don't think that I would have had the courage to step into entrepreneurship and have been so excited about it without some of those experiences.
Right.
So, similar to you, lost my job not quite a year ago, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me at the time. Now, big blow, anytime you have that situation happen to you, it's not a small thing, but wouldn't change it for anything.
Tim, how many people work at your company?
50,000 worldwide,
50,000. So you work at a mega company.
but it's not even publicly traded either.
Oh, is that right? It's privately owned?
No, it's still privately held. My experience, admittedly, the company I've been with for the last almost 13 years, it's been grand. A little bit of a different, I guess, explanation compared to what you've gone through. However, I can think of 2 previous companies I worked with where it was toxic. It was bad. You had everything from leadership on down. It seemed to get worse and worse, and mid-management was like just trash. But again, where I'm at now, very different. I think a lot of it too, circumstance, a little bit of stroke of luck, maybe a few other things. Things break your way. But what makes at least my position unique, and maybe that word is beaten to death in a lot of situations, but what makes it unique is that I'm really kind of on an island. I work one of one, individual contributor from a leadership level. I don't have the direct reports, and I manage one mega account. That's what I do. I manage one account in the country, and admittedly, even in the last couple days, I've had some matters that were, let's just say, incredibly urgent, had to do with contracts and so forth, without getting into details. But the bottom line is, the support that I've gotten, at least from the people I needed within my organization, have been there without question.
That's
So
awesome.
this is a completely different circumstance than what I've seen or been accustomed to in past companies or past scenarios. And for that reason, it's not because I'm on a camera and I'm,
Kissing ass.
Yeah, kissing ass and, sipping Kool-Aid, corporate Kool-Aid and all that. No, it's nothing like that at all. This is really just a matter of there is a stark difference from what I've been in before, and I'm talking some funky, foul, just bad situations, and you get screwed.
Yeah.
You just get screwed. Now, very different circumstance.
Do you feel like a number when you work in a company that's 50,000?
No, I did when I first went there because you start right here and then you start moving up. All of a sudden, you're now, I don't want to say part of like a fraternity, that's not even it, but you're now in a different circle of people who have decision-making capabilities, and you're part of that end of the equation. You're not the doer as much as you are the designer, if you will, on what has to be done. You're directing, you're giving some sort of legitimate input on what has to be managed and taken care of in order to accomplish fill in the blank, whatever that might be. And probably much to what you two were pointing out at your company that you spoke so highly of regarding, again, ideas, there was adoption, companies growing, right? You had the abilities to just do more or at least own it, be part of it rather than something other than that.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
I think so, and I think one of the things I've learned about myself even over time, I'm a very curious person. I like to ask questions and I like to understand things.
Intellectual curiosity,
And
man.
in that environment that we came from, it was very much, if there was a no, it was like, hey, here's why. Here's what's going on, or here's some of the context of why the answer is either no or not right now or something like that. And I like that kind of leadership style, both for people who are responsible for me, but also I like to lead that way, just because of that trait in myself. Now you can't share too much, so there's a fine line to be walked there.
Right.
But I think people perform better when they understand a little bit more about the why, not to just do what I told you to do.
And that's the thing, when there's not transparency or explanation or some other at least attentiveness for the individual or individuals, people want to know, like you say, if it's a no, but why? At least provide me some insight rather than just say, no, can't do this or no, can't do that, whatever the case may be. And on top of that, giving people at least the ability to speak up, have a platform, right? That means a lot to some folks, and it means a lot to most people, I think, at least within an organization. I mean, I can at least think right now, when we look at like the representatives and other people in there who are really the boots on the ground, when they get even their 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whether it's at a meeting or if they bring something to you and they want to share it, let them talk. Let them get it, what good, bad, or otherwise. And that type of stuff goes a long way for them. It helps build a rapport internally with these folks and so forth. But people just want to be heard. That's it. And at the bare minimum, you give them that. On top of it, they just want to be able to be brought into the fold. They at least want to learn and understand why something is whatever it is.
I'm curious, Tim, how many levels from the top are you?
Oh, I'm still got like a mile and a half to climb if I ever wanted to get there. It'll never happen. The funnel gets so narrow. I laugh because I've told people in my company it's like a syndicate almost because, leadership is, and even in certain divisions, it's almost like someone's got to die or retire. It just, those don't open.
Right.
Plus, you got to be willing to move out east, and I'm not going to move out east. At least I don't think I ever would, right? Never say never, right? But I don't think it's really in the cards. The division that I'm in a very good spot. Am I way up top? Heck no, not even close. But I have moved up a number of times nonetheless.
Well, I guess I'm asking because, is it, you have a director and then there's a director on top and then there's a vice president and then there's a president and then there's a CEO. I mean, how many layers are there? Yeah,
but it's all different divisions. And there's a director, and the director reports to essentially a VP who then there's a senior VP of sorts, and then it goes up to, president of the U.S. Pharma, and then there's president of global, if you will. So I'm kind of giving some blanket titles here, but even within that, there's a lot of people still in the mix. There's quite a few.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something that I thought was interesting, though, is would you say there's a lot of stability in your leadership structure, meaning there's just not a lot of...
I don't see much changing of the guard.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and sometimes that can be good, and sometimes that's not. But I think if you have a good culture, good leadership structure, sometimes it can be good. It can help clarify, the clarity of direction, because there's not a lot of change in leadership.
Yeah.
Because I have seen that can have a pretty negative impact when there is a ton of turnover at either top or middle management.
Right.
Almost like as though it's by design.
Well, and I don't know about you, Brian, but all the companies that I've worked for thus far have really been in between 50 and 100 million in revenue yearly, which is a relatively, mid-sized company, small
Right.
company.
Yeah,
essentially.
realistically small, I think.
Right. I would assume, Tim, that your company is multi-billion.
$1 billion. Yeah, no, it's in the many's of billions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, maybe you're bringing some hope back into my life about working in a corporate world.
Again, to each their own, and believe me, even the aspect of having your own business, it's a draw. It is. I'll just leave it at that. You know what I'm talking about, Adam. But anyways, yeah, corporate culture. I would say though, I find a lot of silliness though, nonetheless, just in general. I don't care what industry. It's the people that go up there, and we talked about PowerPoints before, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the death by PowerPoint. And it's always someone puts a quote up on some screen, and this quote resonates with me, and people in the audience, it's silly stuff like that. It's just it's kind of corny, it's lame.
Yeah.
Again, maybe some of these leaders, they love it, they eat it up. I personally, I laugh at half that stuff. Bottom line, I look for people in an organization who basically can get things done. That's it.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say by hook or by crook, but literally, can you just make the decision and make it swiftly? That's the type of stuff that, if you got someone like that in your division or whatever the case may be, that's the stuff I gravitate to. The people that sit there and, for the most part, speak in platitudes, and really you don't see, the things getting done that you need, that stuff bothers me.
I was listening to a podcast, I think yesterday or the day before, and it was with Eric Weinstein. I'm not sure if you guys know who he is. Incredibly smart guy. If he has a brother too that do a lot. His brother's name is Brett.
I think I say Harvey.
No.
He's in jail.
This guy is like a mathematician, a physicist. He's held multiple roles in different industries. If you listen to his podcast, it's like his IQ and his intelligence is off the charts, right? I mean, just off the charts.
Yeah.
That was Eric Weinstein, you said?
Yeah. And one of the things that he was talking about, universities and teachers, is how no one ever teaches you how to teach, right?
Bingo.
So you have instructors
That's it,
and professors across the country in these schools, and they might be incredibly intelligent and blah blah blah, but if they go into a classroom and they have 500 students sitting in a hall and they throw up a PowerPoint and they just read off their PowerPoint, they're a shit teacher.
Completely.
Right? And
I mean, take even like a doctor, for example. Doctors, okay, I mean, there are a gajillion of them in the world, right, even in the U.S. Many of them the academic types. Brilliant, right? They know these journal studies inside and out. They can regurgitate data and studies. And I've seen this for years now because I've been in the industry for 20 years. And even my own doctor, who I like a lot, very academic, but bedside manner good. The problem that I find is it's how they convey the message. And even still, you look at people, again, whether you go back to corporate leadership, you go back to people in academia who teach for a living, bright people, because they know textbook, they know the stuff, whatever the content is, but can they actually convey it to somebody else and package it and unpackage it for whomever the audience may be? A lot of these people, I think, fail. They stink at it.
yeah, I was listening again. I listen to podcasts constantly, but I was listening to another one yesterday. It was Bill Maher's podcast. You guys know Bill Maher,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He has a podcast and it's called oh shit, now I'm forgetting the name of it. But it's
You know,
essentially
there went
like,
your monetization.
yeah, I know. It's essentially like him sitting down in his basement, you know, in laid back chairs talking to somebody, right? And he had Jordan Peterson on, and Jordan Peterson just started his own university that's like online, right? The Peterson Academy.
The guy from Canada?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, oh
Yep.
yeah, I know who he is.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
he's solid.
yeah, and his
He's entertaining.
Oh, this guy knows his stuff, but keep going.
Oh yeah, well, and he started this, and I think he said for anyone, it's only like $40 a month, I believe, or something like that, right? And he said his goal is to essentially get you an equivalency of a bachelor's for under $2,000.
Yeah.
Which is like amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
you know this guy, how intelligent he is, whether you agree with some of his stances or not. But he says he has some of like the best professors that he has hired. He said they're so engaging. The way that they create their videos, because everything's videos online, none of it's live, anything like that. He said they're like Hollywood production level. And he's like, they're incredibly engaging. We have the best professors that'll actually teach you something and whatnot. So I've been wanting to check that out and just see what it's like. But I only bring all of that up because, you know, we talk about PowerPoints, or we talk about even the corporate world or all that kind of stuff. The majority of leaders in all the companies that I've been in, you know, not all leaders, of course, but majority of leaders also have never been taught how to lead, right? And
Makes you wonder how they get to where they're at. I really do wonder.
Well, I think there's a difference. There's management, and there's leadership, and
Totally.
those are
Yeah.
two very, very different roles.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times leaders get shoved into management roles, and that's not their strong suit. And there's
Correct.
managers that get shoved into leadership roles. And you kind of talk about the teaching thing. I think teaching is a skill, but it's also something that some people are just gifted with.
Big,
And
yeah.
right.
and you know, sometimes you find people that are, you know, it's they find themselves in a teaching situation that's just not their passion. They're passionate about their topic. They're not necessarily passionate about teaching people,
Right.
you know, and bringing them up to speed. So
Well, it's like the old kind of cliche of like the sales guy who's the best sales guy in the company, and he's awesome at sales, and he can sell anything, and because of that, he gets, you know, turned into the vice president of sales and has absolutely no fucking clue how to lead anybody, how to work with a management team, how to, you know,
Indeed.
be an executive, right? And it's just like, yeah, you got there because you were so great at your other job, but that does not mean you should be a leader in that particular role, right? So
Very true.
interesting. Tim, have you ever worked at a smaller company? You know,
Yes.
the 50 to 100 mil.
Yes, and it was brutal, and it
Yeah.
sucked. It was horrible. It was literal trash. I mean, I shouldn't be so quick to say that stuff, because gainful employment is gainful employment, if you will. And at the time, I had went and worked for a device company. It was the only device company I ever worked for out of my 21 years in this industry. I spent about 2 to 3 with this device group, and I thought the grass would be greener. There was a lot of aspects I was salivating over, and came to the realization, like, man, I really missed pharma. That's where I'm better suited, because I knew I could get things done the way I wanted to get things done. And then on top of it too, you know, I think,
Give Adderall to all our kids. Is that what you mean?
yeah. No, that's just your kids or my kids. No, but the thing that I ran into more than anything is I just did not have the support.
Yeah.
I'm talking from management to directorship to VP. When alarms were sounded on a potential fallout with one of our contracts, I brought it up to these people at this company, and I'm telling you, it's like they didn't want to hear it. They didn't believe it, like it was Boy Who Cried Wolf. And I'm like, this is some bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? And literally the battleship sunk so quick. And then after the fact, I said, look, you guys basically let the brand die on a vine. And they're like, well, that's not for us to, you know, solve. You got to go out there and continue. I said, I mean, I could go down this road and it gets my blood boiling a little bit, but I'm telling you, this past company that I worked for some years ago, this was probably 15 years ago, to this day, I shake my head and I think to myself, the organization literally did not set people up for success. At least in my experience, it was meant to fail.
So how much of that do you think had to do with, like, did the company have a good set of guardrails for like what they're about, and that would have given them the just kind of the natural inclination to say, okay, in this situation, this is how we as a business behave.
No.
And so I think that's a really important distinction as we get back to culture.
Process sucked.
Yeah.
There was none. It was really ad hoc for all these companies. And again, I'm painting a broad stroke here. There's a lot of companies who talk about mission and values and all that garbage. And it's like, I honestly wonder if half of them even live up to the stuff that they preach on their homepage. So for that purpose, I really am suspect of a lot of that. And in this particular instance, this company they just missed the mark because, again, when you have valid reasoning from a representative, which I was at the time, that something was about to happen in this one account, and if we don't make a move now, and here's the solution to that, again, the folks above me, when I sounded that alarm, just did not step in. There was no effort, there was no consideration, there was no time given. They didn't want to hear me. And then when it all fell apart, it was kind of like a nana boo boo, but it was my head stuck in doo doo, and it was still like it's on me. It's like, well, wait a minute, I told you folks, I literally made this crystal clear, and you abandoned me. You literally abandoned me. And I thought to myself, this is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
The hell with all of you people. Let you all fail.
Can we stick on that kind of vision
Go
mission
ahead.
thing real quick?
Oh, I thought you want to
'Cause-
stick on like the head and doo-doo piece.
No. Let's move past that. Let's try and keep it a little bit positive here.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting topic because you do hear some people. There's like two camps. There's people like vision mission. I mean, you got top CEOs that are like vision mission. We just need metrics. We just got to what do we need to get done? And let's just get it done.
Yeah.
But I think there is a place for vision and mission, but it's got to be simple.
Yeah.
It can't be complicated, and I think a lot of companies overcomplicate it, and then it creates all these gray areas and if-then
Yeah.
statements and stuff. And again, one of the things that I thought was interesting about the company that Adam and I worked for way back when, it was Omnitech, and I don't remember if you were there at Omnitech. I think you might have come in later.
Yeah.
But what Omnitech, I remember first day I came in, they said, we're about customer for life. That's it. Customer for life. Every customer we get, we're going to have them forever. That's the mission of the company. It wasn't about the technology. I mean, it was about the technology, but it wasn't really about the technology. It was like, we're going to take care of the customer. When they need something, as long as it's not completely crazy, the answer is yes. And what that did is for people like in your role, they knew the company was going to have their back. And the people on the production floor, that's what they were coming to work for, was I'm here to take care of the customer in whatever role I've got. But it was simple. Everybody knew it. Wasn't complicated. So I think there is a place for it, but leaders have to keep it simple, and they got to repeat it, and then they have to stick to it. The minute you deviate from it, then it loses all meaning.
I was just going to say, if you deviate, that's right. And it is, it's funny because you can go to these home pages. I mean, it doesn't matter. You could take Bank of America, Citibank. You could take, Cisco Foods, or whatever the company might be. I don't care. And you read whatever their value or their missions are. And I just think to myself, are you really doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, really? Or is this just a bunch of window dressing to make it look like, you're as good as you say you are? You know what I'm saying?
Anything people are involved with,
yeah.
the answer is no, you're not doing it perfect all the time.
And
right?
that's just it.
But I also think it's important to acknowledge that hey, we're not going to get it right every time, but we're going to recognize it when we do get it wrong, and we're going to own up to it, and I think that's true of just people in general as individuals, and you can carry that all the way up to a company.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of, if you go to any company's website nowadays, there's something about how green they are, and
sustainability.
Sustainability. I mean, no matter what, these people could be producing nuclear arms, and there'll be something about
we're
sustainable. It's just like, oh, come on, cut the shit. You're just putting that up there for.
That's PR. That's optics.
Right.
That's all that is, man. And, it does make you laugh. It's comedy, if anything.
Yeah, exactly. But it's on every single one of them because it has to be, apparently. But okay.
Well, I mean, Brian's over there drinking boxed water. That's sustainable.
So this
there's
is interesting.
there's the shout out.
Well, not even intentionally, but so I went to my first chamber meeting for my local chamber,
Nice.
and one of the members did a talk on recycling because he's been in the industry for like 30 years.
Okay.
And it was actually really interesting to hear him talk because I've been telling my family for years, it's like, that stuff just all goes in the garbage. They don't actually recycle any of it.
I've said the same thing. I really wonder, like, it just goes to the same pile.
Because I've heard a couple. Because occasionally, every few years, a report comes out on NPR or something. That's where I last heard it was. Oh yeah, China stopped buying our stuff, and so now it's all just getting thrown in the landfill anyway.
Yeah.
And but he debunked a lot of my assumptions, and so his thing was just all about corrugated, like paper, and how this is totally recyclable. They're trying to push more to this than the plastics, just because a lot of the plastics aren't getting to the recycling centers.
But isn't it laughable when you go to the grocery store for how many years? Don't use paper because the trees.
I know.
But the paper's the better option for like a million reasons.
We think we're so progressive, so we go and change all these other things. The rest of the world still had it right. They've been still continuing to use paper. So now the push is to get back to paper because it's completely renewable.
I always go for paper at the grocery store. Why? Because it's a nice, even shaped container that like everything like when they bag it, it's nice and even. And it's got nice handles on it. The plastic doesn't hold much. And honestly, I don't need you probably at your house maybe have piles of plastic bags you stuff in that giant sock. You know what I'm talking about?
We have cats, so we use them.
Well, yeah, because we use them for the outside when picking up the dog poops and all that stuff too. But yeah,
So they do have a purpose.
but they end up in the trash anyway.
Well, that is true. That is true. So you mentioned the Jordan Peterson and university thing. So can I use that to segue into something I mentioned to you that I thought was kind of interesting?
Do.
Because that to me is a good example of something I feel like something is happening right now, kind of in culture in our country, even around the world. And this term anti-establishment, I keep hearing brought up again. And that's sort of what he's doing. It's okay. The establishment says you've got to spend hundreds of thousands and you have to go to a 4-year university. And if you don't, you're going to fail. And he's trying to prove the point that, no, you don't have to. I think of other things, a lot of people have different feelings about Elon Musk and what he's done, but you look at, he's like, no, we can make electric cars and we can make them relatively affordable. Mm-hmm. No, you're crazy. You can't do that. And he just went out and he did it. So you see a lot of innovators kind of trying new things that go against the grain. I'm seeing a real resurgence of entrepreneurship in America at a time when it's really not very easy to do it.
It's tough.
The risks are high, but there's many of us who are thinking it's worth it. It's worth the risk. So I don't know. What do you guys think's going on with that? And we even see this a little bit in our election cycles. Not as much because the two-party system is so powerful that you can't really see a lot of new thought leaders coming in. RFK I think is a really interesting guy. I don't know if I would have voted for him, but I've got a lot of respect for his knowledge of the things he's passionate about, and he's finding a way to get what is important to him done. He's gone to Trump to say, hey, this is what I need from you. I'm worried about the health of our nation. I've got some facts to prove it. And,
Well, look no further than the bogus food chart that our FDA put forth like 50 years ago, telling us to eat 12 grains of bread every day and 8 cups of milk. And all, you know what I'm talking about? That is like total just garbage, that food pyramid. I remember that.
Still exist on their site, I wonder?
But it just goes to show you yet another epic failure by the federal government in a number of ways. I mean, the same government that basically told you at one time, it's okay to put your babies on their belly when they sleep. Not really. You should put them on their back. And then also this, you could point out endless examples. They can't run the post office. I mean, it's just from...
Yeah, don't knock the post office. I'm a fan of the post office.
No, okay. You what do you like?
We use it every day. So
there you go.
We got another home-based business where we resell things.
Okay.
I'll give Jamie all the credit. Jamie has.
Yeah, but you're not the government though.
That's true.
That's true.
But they offer a valuable service.
That's cool, man. But like the thing again, you look at here you go. Look at this. Fruits, grains, protein, veggies.
Brian, what you were saying about anti-establishment, this, right? I commented to you, I think the mainstream media is going to be dead after the boomers are gone. After with our generation coming up, I mean, I think MSNBC, CNBC, you name it, even Fox News. I mean, I think that stuff is all going to be dead within 15 to 20 years. And I say that because you have some awesome different media outlets coming up, whether it's, the infamous Rogan, right, or the many out there that are now producing a lot of viewers and a lot of money for that matter. I don't think people want to hear the MSM bullshit anymore. And I think the younger generation really doesn't want to hear it anymore. And I think the younger generation doesn't turn on their TVs and watch nightly news. And
go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just say even like local news. I mean, I watch national news in pieces. I tend to read more articles than anything else. It's not as though I sit there as a viewer trying to get, my daily dose of whatever from whomever sitting in front of a camera reading some teleprompter and updating me about, it could be the hurricane or it could be something political, etc. I tend to really just read, and that's how I process my thoughts on a topic.
Well, you're interesting because you have no social media.
Zero.
Right? So if
that's a commitment, man. I respect that.
Except that MySpace, right?
Well,
but nobody's there.
Just Tom.
Just Tom. That's right.
But with no social media, and you say you really don't sit down and watch TV to get your news, how do you get your news?
I mean, I source it from I'll tell you right now here. So, first off, conservative talk radio. So yeah, that pretty much tells me where I stand. But conservative talk radio, local and national. So if I'm in the car, if I'm traveling, even at the gym, I don't even really play music. I'm listening because I want to hear what they're talking about, and I'm curious. Of course, I do get my stuff from Fox News, the Breitbarts, Buck Sexton. Those guys are really the people that I tend to pay attention to.
So it's like
Drudge,
specific sites you go to.
Drudge, I've gone to in the past, paid attention to that stuff.
Drudge sucks now, though.
But Drudge has changed, man.
I know.
It's not what it used to be. It's wildly different.
Yeah, ever since Trump.
Bingo. Yeah.
I mean, Mike Drudge must just have something against Trump.
He does. It's like 95% negative and all that other stuff. So, yeah, Drudge used to be one of those where I actually didn't mind it. I kind of enjoyed it. Admittedly, some of the BBC, so British Broadcasting, curious what comes out of Europe. Because it just, again, it's almost like you triangulate, if you will, but I want to read through.
Yep.
And if I'm seeing similar stories, what's different from one to the next? It's more just curiosity than anything else. But yeah, I'm not interested so much in watching the clowns on ABC, NBC, CBS. Take your pick.
Brian, where do you get your news from?
Well, again, this will tell you kind of where some of my thought patterns lie. Is start my day every day with the world and everything in it, which is global news from a biblical worldview. So.
The world and everything in it.
The world and everything in it.
Is it a show or a
It's a podcast, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, daily podcast. But then I also do, I try and seek out other sources. So, like for example, even I was watching the Oprah production, the recent Oprah production with Kamala.
Yeah.
Just again trying to, because we kind of get fed sound bites from all sides, and it's always, I completely distrust both, red and blue. I mean, just I don't believe anything that comes direct from those sources at this point. Right. So I at least try and go to the original media and try and listen to it myself, and then draw my own conclusions. And it's a pain in the butt. I just turn it up to 1.5 to 2x and It makes it more entertaining when they sound like chipmunks. But other things, so I try and find independent sources. So I recently started listening to a podcast, and I'm not remember. I think Jordan is my lawyer, and she's does a podcast called Unbiased, and her whole point, and she's like nobody's friend because she'll fact check both sides equally harshly, and I appreciate that. And then she challenges you at the end to critically think and even try and argue the other position's side. Like, okay, can
Is
you?
she like a really pretty girl with long blonde hair and like straight hair, skinny?
I think so. Yeah.
I see her on TikTok.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
I don't watch her. I don't watch the videos. I just get the audio because I like podcasts because I can do productive things while I'm listening.
It'd be even better to watch it.
Trying to think of what else I seek out.
She's
but,
good though. She's good.
Oh, so somebody I find really entertaining and interesting these days is Russell Brand.
He's a trip.
Yeah.
He's a big Trump supporter, right?
He is. I think he's becoming one. I think he's again. He's kind of in that camp of anti-establishment, and
Well, that's just it. The guy used to be like a wild liberal, like long
Used to be,
ago.
right.
Yeah, used to be. Like I'm
Yep.
talking long ago, and he was kind of more of an annoying person. I actually think he's something. I don't know what made him shift or change, if you will, his mindset. But clearly he's a different of different belief now.
He's reborn.
Completely. Like
Yeah. I mean, he says it, right?
well,
I mean,
total
he's-
180.
He got baptized this year. Yeah.
Is that right?
that's
Yeah.
the other thing, because he used to be, rude, crude, like he
Oh,
was
yeah.
kind of outlandish. Obviously, kind of taboo maybe in his comedy and everything else, But now he's just like a cool dude.
Well, he used to be huge into drugs. I mean, he was a big heroin addict
Oh, yeah.
for a
Yeah.
really long time, and
That might make you think differently.
yeah, but I saw him. It was like, like Tucker Carlson had a performance where they were all on stage, and
I think he's on tour or something right now.
yeah, and they had Russell Brand with him, and he asked
They just
him
do
to,
this on stage.
He asked him to be right. He asked him to lead him on a prayer, and like at the end of it, and Russell Brand like got down on his knees on the stage and did this like amazing prayer at the end of the show, and it was like, holy shit, this guy has really gotten godly.
Yeah. He's not afraid about using his platform to share his faith, which I give him a lot of
Gotta admire it.
credit for.
Yeah, that takes guts to do.
Gotta admire it.
But yeah, I get my news, like I open TikTok, or not TikTok, I open Twitter, X every morning. It's one of the first things I do because news comes in so fast on X, where it's like, if you want, up to the minute data on what's going on, use X.
Unless you're in Brazil.
I really, yeah, right.
Do you actually want that though? That's actually something you want to have.
Yeah.
Is that good? That's good for you. See, for me,
Yeah.
I'm good with just give me the major sound bites about 12 to 24 hours later, because you're gonna have more facts then. And right now, one of the reasons one of the things I don't like about the media, and one of the things I like about that, Jordan is my lawyer, is she's even says like, I'm not going to cover this yet. I need to wait until I can get more information. This is what I can say for now, but I'll bring this up in the next podcast. And there's a lot of situations where I think that's where our mainstream media has lost trust. Is they're doing the clickbait. They're trying to get they're trying to drive ad revenue. It's not about informing us as a consumer or as a citizen. And so I'm okay with a little bit of slowness. I think the days of the newspaper, that might have been one of the blessings, is people were vetting it, doing their research, and then getting really thoughtful about what they're putting on the paper before it gets printed, and then it goes out.
Well, at the same time, I mean, Twitter X is not, it's not a news source, right? I mean,
That's true, yeah.
These are people journalists. These are everyday people that are just, posting about what they see. I mean, the example is, when the guy drove through the Waukesha parade.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And, I mean, I knew about that instantly.
Yeah.
And there were people posting that saw it real time, that could give you real information, that could tell you exactly what they saw, and you know about it then and there in 5 minutes. And when there's a big event like that, that's super important. you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's
like,
good from that
I
perspective.
thought it was great. I mean,
Mhm.
when the assassination attempt, the first one on Trump, happened, I mean, there was minute by minute news of what was going on. The guy saw on the roof, you know, all these things where it was like sitting there looking at X, refreshing it like every 5 minutes. You're like, oh, holy shit, that happened. Oh, that's new. Oh, that's new. And you know, it takes the actual media on television and other places a full day to give you any of that information, and then some of it they don't even talk about, and they, you know, for whatever reason.
You know what I've found to be probably the best news source, because they're always there on time, even it seems before it even happens. That's TMZ. I mean, seriously, how does TMZ always have the video of everybody that's either like died or, you know,
'Cause
car
they're the
accident,
paparazzi.
or they're like always? How many people work for TMZ that are in all these places following all these people?
Yeah,
I'm serious. How do they always have a beat
I don't know.
and exclusive footage and, like, you know,
That is kind of crazy.
like-
I never really thought of that.
seriously, I mean, I joke, but I'm like kind of not joking, because it's always like TMZ is the first one on the scene. I'm thinking to myself, do they just have people on, like, almost like dispatch?
It's almost like it's probably contractors,
It's gotta
right?
be.
Like independent people that are out filming, and they'll sell their shit to TMZ, and then
It's-
TMZ
Probably.
says
It's
we got it.
gotta be. I'm just like, how? But how though? They always have like the footage, the image. You know, we were able to catch up with so and so. It's like, well, how the hell did you do that? Like 20 minutes ago, you know, like,
Right, right. Britney Spears with a bald head.
yeah, it's always something like awkward. But on a serious note, I don't know if you saw in the news, just in the last basically 2 days, this has been growing a lot more people concerned. I mean, I don't know where you stand with the Soros family. I can't stand George Soros, but he's looking to buy up 200 radio stations. Right, George Soros, mega billionaire. His
Yeah.
son's nothing but a pipsqueak. He's daddy's, you know, trust fund baby, and looking to buy up 200 radio stations. Right before the election, they donate heavily, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. They stuff into those super PACs for like Chuck Schumer and other ones. And yeah, this is something that they want to now control the airwaves of 200 radio stations, which means they'll control the content and what is actually said. Think about that. You think any conservative is going to be able to land a spot for 1 hour on any of these 200 radio stations? Not a chance.
Right.
No, I kind of wonder how much of an impact that really has, though. At the same time, because I mean, what is that? You know, 4 radio stations across, you know, every state, and
Yeah, I mean, how many of them are like local or whatever, you
Yeah.
know? But right, so you stratify it, or you take out the littlest ones, maybe the ones that maybe don't, like you say, have much impact. It's still something when you think about 200 radio stations that they just want to,
yeah, it's a lot of control.
you know, they want to control those airwaves, the content, whether it's the commercial content, the people that are on there having their their shows broadcast, and it's going to be dictated as to what should be discussed, and that's what it's going to be.
It's kind of expanding that media monopoly, but I think that's an interesting. It's
like-
interesting how X and there's another. There's something I saw in a blurb that Elon was joking about maybe buying up another social media company.
But like-
There's Threads that I think never went anywhere. That's Facebook's.
But look at Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
to buy these media outlets, again, there's an agenda. It's not because I always wanted to own a newspaper. I always
Yeah.
wanted to own radio stations. It's not some lifelong dream of theirs. When you got billions and billions of dollars, it's like, who would want to buy a newspaper unless you have an agenda?
I mean, at least Musk was upfront about it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah,
he told you why he wanted to buy it.
Yeah, completely. I know he's lost his tail in value on it, but it's still the number one. This is still it's the number one news source, isn't it? Like number one.
Yep.
I mean, really, it is. Yes,
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go Elon.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen those montages of like the mainstream media all repeating the exact
They
same line?
parrot. It's like a little birdie on the
Right.
shoulder.
Yep.
You know.
I just wonder, how does that happen? Who's calling the shots,
Dude,
and who's like
it's
the
so-
sharp as attack thing with Biden, right? Everyone used the phrase "sharp as attack," everybody used that phrase. Everyone in the media used that for sharp as a tack, sharp as a tack. Who's the guy at the top that's like, sharp as a tack sounds great? Let's distribute that to all of our news networks.
It's like subliminal messaging. Think about it. Like, you keep hearing it over and over and over. I mean, you probably get it in your mind that, well, it must be.
Am I conspiratorial in thinking that somebody does that, or do you think
the evidence would suggest that there's obviously something there? Now, granted, again, when I watch those videos, I do take them with a little bit of a grain of salt too, right? Because again, it's somebody trying to make a point. But I think when we talk about the anti-establishment kind of movement in our country, I think people are just starting to distrust big organizations, whether it's private or public, and they have a right to, because they've proven themselves to not be trustworthy, and that's why I think things like X is one of those rare circumstances where, am I thrilled about some of the stuff that's on there? No, but it's one of the few places where people can speak their mind and it doesn't get censored.
That's correct, and that's what makes it an anomaly. Whereas most everything else, it's all within a box. There's not a lot of maneuvering or wiggle room, and people should be leery and suspect and question and keep questioning, and maybe even question some more. Anything from organizations, companies, media outlets, academia, everything down the line. If you ask me personally, I damn near distrust everything. Like, I'm talking everything.
I think the same way.
That's
where it gets hard to. It gets hard to read the news. It gets hard to. You said triangulate before. It gets hard to figure out what you're actually being fed, and especially with numbers and when it comes to statistics. Numbers coming from the government and whatnot. There was somebody posted about inflation and how. I think it was like Pete Buttigieg on X posted, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and guess what? Inflation's going down, and it's like, per what statistic?
Right.
And what department is putting that out?
Correct.
And
what measure? Yeah.
Did they change the metrics? And did they, you can do anything with numbers, right?
Oh.
I could make a shit sandwich look like a Caesar salad in terms of numbers if I wanted to, right? It's just you can do it. It's not hard.
My old MBA professor, never forget this guy, because for whatever reason, this still sticks in my mind from 2011. And he's one of the few that actually said some really bright things that I was like, that makes just perfect sense. And he said, on the very first day of class, he ended up saying, he says, everybody, I just want you to know, numbers don't lie, people do.
Right.
That's the first thing he said. And it was spot on. And I'll never forget, even in high school, my economics teacher, this guy, he started the economics, very first day of class, he says, students, he says, economics is about one word, choices. And I was like, that makes absolute sense, But again, you talk about numbers, and when they talk about inflation, well, okay, fine, by what measure, and what criteria, and oftentimes it's, well, the rate of inflation is going down, but it still sucks, it's still bad. It's not like
the numbers don't lie thing, though. I almost would go like, numbers can lie to you, right? It depends how they're being displayed to you,
how it's presented, how it's conveyed, how it's taught.
Well, and they don't put the number in the context of the trends.
Correct.
They don't show the big curve that went way up here. And we're going down, but we've got a long way to go to reach parity with where we were. Correct. If we can even get there. We may not ever get there.
Well, somebody the other day had said, violent crime is dramatically down within the Biden-Harris administration. Yes. And then somebody immediately after said, no, that's not what happens when you don't prosecute.
Correct.
Right? And it's like, you're not going to get the statistics of violent crime if you don't prosecute people for them. And it was just like, oh shit, that person had an incredibly valid point, right? Like, and then how is that measurable? Can you? Is there anyone measuring that? Are there any statistics around it?
It makes you wonder.
Who's right in this situation? And I just go, I have no idea anymore. I just don't know.
That's why when you get anybody, I swear it doesn't matter. It could be some underling, it could be some top dog. I don't care within the government. And I've made this mention too before, Adam, in an older podcast. I said whether it's the DOJ, FBI, CIA, I don't care what acronym it is of any of these departments in government from Virginia to D.C. None of them, if you ask me, are worth a lick of giving trust to. None of them. I think they all stink to high heaven.
So kind of maybe that's a good segue into something else I threw at you, Adam, was what's your guys' view of the role of government in a republic? Federal, state,
Cut the
local.
grass at the parks, build some bridges and roads, get out of my way. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's more to it, but truth be told, government is just, it's become far too large, and it has invaded people's lives far too greatly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I picked up a book, actually. I was shopping at Costco the other day, of all places, and I picked up a book, and it's about every president that we've had from here on out, right? Starting from George Washington all the way up to Biden. And it's pretty damn good just from what you learn from each president. But one of the key takeaways from reading through the first 4 presidents is there was always the question of how much government should play, especially federal government should play in the lives of daily people, right? And there were people that the Federalists that wanted a strong federal government, and there were the Republicans that wanted essentially everything to go to the states, and it was just that kind of push-pull, presidency to presidency, right? But I think what has happened along the way is that it's kind of like liberalism or progressive. You never really go backwards once you go forwards, right? Or it's very, very hard to go backwards once you go forward.
Incredibly difficult.
It's hard to unwind things.
Mm-hmm.
I think the concept that Elon has right now with, he jokes about calling it Doge, right? Because he jokes about the Dogecoin all the time and everything. And Doge, it was Department of Government Efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Which I was like, damn, I mean, right on. It feels like this is all a movie, how that stuff comes together, right? But
I really think he makes the Earth spin. I think he's got like some magnets up there.
well, he's got the most satellites of any company or country in the entire world. But anyways, you ask what is the role of, or what do you think the role of a government should be? I mean, I would take it even as far back as I don't think it was necessary for the government to build roads. I don't think it was, necessary for them to build infrastructure. I don't think it was necessary for a school system. I don't think it was necessary even for a postal system, right? Maybe at one time.
Fighting words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dangerous territory there.
I'm going to leave right now.
Maybe at one time, yes, because someone has to step in and do it, and in the very beginning of the country, the federal government did some really important things for the United States, right? The Louisiana Purchase, right? The acquisition of land, essentially, to make America what it is, was really important. But they also, right when they started doing that is when they started taxing people, right? So how did they fund those acquisitions?
Legalized theft.
Well, how did they fund them? They taxed whiskey, they taxed liquor, right? And then it's a snowball that keeps rolling. But if I look back and go roads, privately, people and companies would need roads to, ship their products and everything else, right? And there could have been a different way how all of that was established.
So it's funny you mention that, because I always go back to Obama when he would say, you didn't build that.
Yeah.
I mean, really, among other things, too. It was just another clown statement by him. But, that concept, truth be told, sounds like I'm not copying, but what you're mentioning isn't that far off from what has crossed my mind in the past, too. I've always thought, why couldn't much of this have just been privatized from the very beginning? Why did we need to insert federal government to do all this? Because of that, now they can make claim, well, you didn't build that. And it's like, that's the thing. And moreover, as you look at every aspect, it seems almost every aspect now of daily lives. Hell, look at healthcare, for God's sakes. You know, the fact that there's Medicare dollars, it's government dollars. Second, I mean, it's tax dollars. I don't care what, they call it government money. But the bottom line is they can now say, well, we should have a say. We should have control. We should have Inflationary Reduction Act. We should be able to take money from the pharmaceutical companies for this list of products. And, I mean, it's really remarkable that the minute the government, which is, again, our money, they put even a dollar into something, they now have the right to do what they want to do, because it's just even a buck they've put into it. Do you see where I'm going with this? That's why there's such a desire, I believe, by those on one side of the aisle to have as much control as possible. The more that they can involve government funds, right, the more that they can involve law in any aspect of people's lives, now all of a sudden they get the say. The people don't.
Yeah, I guess the one area I'll maybe disagree a little bit on that is
Please do.
I firmly believe the red and blue are both they're both huge government.
Oh, they're both
You
guilty
know,
of a
so
lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong.
It's just they want to a lot of them want to put a lot of money in different buckets.
Screw
That's all
Paul
it comes
Ryan.
down to. You know. So one of the news resources, or at least information resources, I forgot to mention earlier, was one Adam turned me on to, which is Lex Friedman's podcast.
Yeah, he's great.
And I don't know if you listened to his interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah,
Not recently.
that
no.
dude's sharp as a tack.
well, he he knows his stuff, and so what I respect about him, from what I'm hearing, and I haven't finished the whole podcast, is he does seem, and RFK kind of is in this same camp for me. There's a handful of people out there who are approaching this time from kind of a more of a values-based sort of thing. It's like they know what they're about and they can articulate their position very well. And so Adam knows this about me. You know, he and I kind of got, at least I started my libertarian journey, and I know we're kind of that anarchist, right-wing, crazy people.
Hey man, we're the Ron Paul
I was going to say
supporters.
that's when we went out. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where that kind of started. But what he said something that I thought was really interesting, was that the federal government's purpose should be limited to protecting our borders and private property rights for our citizens,
That's about it.
and everything else should be left to the states or your village, or
Absolutely.
I mean, the power starts at the bottom and works its
Yeah.
way up.
What were the two
works its
again?
way up.
What-
Protect our borders, so
Yep.
national defense,
Mm-hmm.
and protecting private property rights. So I cannot infringe on your property, property, and that's kind of a libertarian principle, which is, hey, there's no crime if there's no victim.
Yeah. Well,
It blends in too with the notion of property taxes. Actually,
Mhm.
if you know what I'm maybe going to go with this one, I don't know, but you never really own your house.
I
It could
hear
be,
this all the time now.
no, totally.
Yeah.
It could be totally paid off. You know, you can say, I paid that thing off 10 years ago. I say, I own my house, but you pay property taxes. If you don't pay your property taxes, they're going to take your house. The city can come and take your house. You see what I'm saying? Or, it's no longer yours.
You could choose to live somewhere that's unincorporated, though.
This is true.
And then you don't have to worry about property taxes. You also don't have
This is
roads or
true.
water, so there is a
Right.
little bit of choice involved there too, though. And I think that's the tension I think that we're seeing, and where some of this anti-establishment stuff is coming from, is people are starting to realize that we're at a tipping point. We are either going to retain the nature of our republic, which is power to the people, power to your local village, up
Yes.
to your state, and then the little bitty federal government, or are we a democracy driven by a federal head that is going to try and homogenize everything?
Ugh.
Well, I think there
What
are
a word.
certain things.
That's what it feels like. Right?
Homogenize, you're right.
It's like everyone has to be the same, but you have to be different. You have to accept differences, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's a weird contradiction, it feels like.
Well, this is why I get nervous about global type of law. I mean, the United Nations, to start with, among other factors, I really do think there is a push from a lot of nefarious folks, some you might see on TV, others not, that they want a standard global law applied for many nations. And that scares the crap out of me. Because you can even see it right now, like the freedom of speech thing. There is no such thing as freedom of speech in many countries, actually. You know what I mean? Like you
Oh,
can't just
very
speak
true.
up.
Yeah.
And so they
Or freedom
even,
of religion.
right. And so for that reason, it's like you can't even. There are people that want to prosecute Americans for going on X or wherever you want to go and posting something about their country, their people, their whatever, and they want to prosecute you. Yet you're in the United States. But they still want to prosecute you. That's the kind of stuff that scares the crap out of me. And people sit there and say, "Oh no, that shit'll never happen." No way, no how. Huh. I don't doubt for a second there's a push for it.
I don't think it
I
can
would
happen
agree.
as easily in a republic. But
I agree.
In a federalist democratic system, I think it can.
That's my point. Like, what if it keeps inching and inching and inching, and all it does is the walls keep closing in tighter on individuals. They don't have the ability to really exercise rights. Rights are now, they're really running thin.
Well, the hard question that I always come up with this, question or scenario is, when is it appropriate for the federal government to step in and start making rules or regulating things?
Yeah.
And even you could even say federal versus state. I mean, when it comes to things that Bobby Kennedy's talking about, right? Food and food safety,
Yeah.
and food regulation, and how terrible capitalism in the U.S. has, how terrible our food supply has become because of capitalism. And where should that be regulated? At state by state? Should that be regulated at the federal level? I almost lean towards that is probably one of those things that should be federally regulated, right? I mean, maybe in the states it would work as well. Maybe the smaller the size of, the population that's regulating it, the better.
Mhm.
But, there are some things,
But I think those the ways that the federal government can step into a situation like that have been there from the founding of the republic. Things like monopolies. If there's a monopoly, and
Yeah.
and some of the food companies are getting to the point where when you look at the tree and who actually owns,
yeah, right.
whatever 50 of the brands on the shelf you're looking at, and it's one company. That's effectively a monopoly.
Right.
And the federal government does have the authority to step into those situations. They just choose not to exercise it because I think probably somebody's getting some money on the back end
Lobbyists.
to
Right.
to get elected again. The other piece is, again, I thought this was interesting, and I want to keep kind of thinking about how Vivek put this, was protecting private property rights. Well, part of your private property rights is yourself, right? And if you cannot get access to healthy food because of that monopoly, could you say that they're harming your private property by putting you at risk of getting cancer? I don't know. That's
Right.
kind of a stretch. But that's where I can kind of at least argue with myself and say, okay, maybe that is a place where the federal government can and should step in because they're defending, by extension, private property rights or monopoly, preventing a monopoly.
You're already playing with words.
I know
though.
I am. I am. Yeah.
I would say the same thing about some things, physics related, where you start to get into nuclear weapons, right? Where there's some really scary shit with nuclear weapons that the government needs to protect or needs to keep secret or whatever it may be. And you could say, oh, well, that's in defense of America. Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that, right? But it's wordplay, right?
It is to an extent, but I also think the reason the republic model was designed the way it was is that for really heavy, like nation impacting topics like that, you get all of the people who have actually spoken to their constituents. They understand what their people in their community and their state, what's important to them, and they bring that voice. I think that's what's been lost. Average Joe on the street, I don't care what any of them say, their voice really isn't what's, they're being told what they need to believe.
Yeah.
They're not being asked, what do you think about this? As much. I don't see that in a lot of the interactions I see with politicians and their constituents today.
What do you guys think about the Electoral College in the U.S.?
Preserve it.
Preserve it. Why?
Because we are an elected republic, which is a form of a democracy. If you go to straight democracy, then it's just winner take all, most votes wins. And
Do you know why the Electoral College was created?
well, it was to give equal representation to the states, which kind of goes back to one of our original points. I mean, it wasn't, sure, you might only have 100 people that live over here, and then you have 1 million people live over here, but you can't just cut them out. There has to be an equal representation for that state.
It was to help try and level the playing field so that states that either economically,
Correct.
geographically, population-wise, at least they'll have a voice. They might not
Correct.
have as strong of a voice. That's that's where the House comes in, right? I mean, you have
Correct.
less power because of the
But the two senators.
population-based representation.
Correct.
I recently read a little bit differently about why the Electoral College was created. And what I had read, which somewhat makes sense, is because when the country was founded, the majority of the population didn't have good access to information. So a lot of the leaders thought that the country wasn't informed enough to be able to vote on something like presidency. So they, in every one of the states, they had so many electors that they knew would be informed, and they knew they could, vote with an informed decision. And now that's very much changed, right? Where information spreads incredibly quickly. We can all be informed of anything, like we were talking about Twitter or X or whatever else, very, very quickly. We're all informed or capable of being.
Or misinformed.
Or misinformed, yeah. Disinformation, misinformation. But it just, if I look at it through that lens of the Electoral College was really just, I agree with you. I mean, we have the House based on population and so many people in the House, but we have the Senate, right? That's just equal 2 per state, right? But I couldn't even tell you how the Electoral College, how many electoral votes each state gets and why. Do you guys know why?
I don't know it as well as I should probably. I know I've dug into it at in the election. I forget which. Well, actually, every election has been kind of close in our lifetimes, and it's come into play where the guy I voted for won the popular but didn't win the.
I think that's only happened
college.
2 or 3 times in history now.
But it's all been relatively recent because things have been pretty tight.
Right.
Yeah, they have.
So where I think I would be okay getting rid of the Electoral College is if the nation moved towards ranked choice voting.
Move towards, was it at?
Ranked choice voting.
What is ranked choice voting? Enlighten me.
So ranked choice voting
Say
is
it 5 times
basically.
fast.
I know it's really hard to say. So for example, I'm every test I ever take, I always lean way libertarian.
'Kay.
And I would love to consistently vote for libertarian candidates, but when I do, I get in trouble from Republicans and Democrats because I'm stealing votes from them. And I know libertarians aren't going to win. It's just there's no shot. The game is at this point rigged so bad, no third party has a chance. And where the ranked choice voting comes into play is I go in and I vote and I say my first choice is the libertarian candidate. I know they're probably not going to get enough votes to win, but I can vote for them. And my second choice then is something else.
I see what you're saying.
My third choice is something else. And basically, if my candidate does not get enough votes,
Yeah.
then my vote cascades to my second choice. And it basically just filters things out until you get to a point of majority where, it might not have been my first choice or second choice, but now I at least had played a role in actually affecting this election with my vote.
Does any country have that?
No, not that I'm aware
I'm
of.
not aware of any that. Well, actually, I do think there's a couple of small countries that have done it, but it's not without fault. It's not a perfect system, but it would enable other voices to have at least more of a shot at affecting.
Feasibly, you could
change.
have 4 or 5 people running for president, and you're ranking all of them.
Right.
Feasibly, right? Interesting concept. I didn't even know such a thing. I had no idea.
Yeah, there's
Honestly,
a organization called Represent Us that's out there that they're the ones who run the funny ads every election cycle about just how you really can't.
Outside of 2 parties?
Yeah.
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 Right. I heard something, and I don't know if this is true. Maybe you guys have heard something similar, but like what RFK is doing, or what he tried to do by keeping himself on all of the ballots that are not in the swing states. Right. So
Right.
he tried to pull himself off all the swing state ballots, right? Which he
Correct.
didn't succeed in. Like Wisconsin, he's still going to be on Wisconsin's ballots, but he wanted himself to stay on all the non-swing states because if a third party gets X amount of votes in a
Take
national,
5%.
is it then what happens though?
They get federal money.
Is that what it is?
It all comes down to the Benjamins.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was like when I heard that, it was like, wow, that is actually very strategic.
Well, it's very strategic, but the
Right.
system shouldn't be set up that way to begin with.
Agreed.
You know, again, it's the federal government, or it's really so. This has happened every cycle that a third party has started, and then it started with Ross Perot.
Oh, I miss him, man.
When he used his
guy
I
loves-
love,
this guy
I
loves
literally, you know, he's up there with like Jesus. I'm telling you, man. Ross Perot, dude, he's like my dad that I never had. I think.
Mine
I
would
mean,
be
he-
Ron Paul.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on Ron Paul. So the thing that Ross Perot did though is he did leave a legacy because he
was effective, man. 20% he took.
well, but the problem is that then that encouraged Red and Blue to collude to ensure that could never happen again.
Yeah.
So it's
He also
it hasn't
came in,
helped the third parties.
He came in at a funky time, though. I mean, people were kind of. I think George W. He'd already been VP for 2 years under Reagan. He had his one term up until '92, and then I guess again we talked about this, Adam, on another podcast. I mean, the first Bush president, he did a few things that should not have been done, and he made himself look bad. Number one, in the town hall debate, he's looking at his watch, you know, completely uninterested, while Bill Clinton's like engaging with the people. You had the savings and loan crisis, which was occurring back then. And on top of it, you also had the no new taxes, which was ended up being a bunch of bullshit anyways. So yeah, but Ross Perot came in at the right time and really threw a wrench in those plans. Bush would have won a second term. He would have, had Perot not been in the mix. But man, you got to hand it to Perot. That guy knew what he was doing. I like him. I like that guy.
I always said I don't know enough about Ross
He
Perot
was he
to
was
even comment.
kind of a pioneer in the anti-establishment to an extent.
Well, it's funny because, again, I know, Adam, this is on repeat, but this is the same dude, little tiny guy, big ears. They poked fun of him on Saturday Night Live. But he'd go up there with the giant, like, poster board showing the national debt's going to go up, and this is going to, you know, all these crazy curves and all this data. But it was understandable. It was relatable. He made it so simple for people to just get. And there was, I think, a portion of the population that thought this guy is, like, way nuts, like trillions of dollars. Like, who's talking trillions of dollars? You know, trillions of dollars. Like, we're almost 40 trillion in debt now. We're paying $1 trillion a year just on the interest.
What he predicted is
He's so spot
coming
on.
to be. Yeah.
He knew this stuff was going to happen. He saw the writing on the wall. Federal government spending like just, you know, fat cats, etc., wasting money, printing money, etc. And man, he just had a knack for picking it apart.
Yeah, this kind of brings me back around to, you know, as things grow
Yeah.
and people when power gets concentrated like at the top, like our federal
Yeah.
government, accountability gets lost.
That's why I got to go Doge. Doge is what it is.
So the other thing that I read about when I was, you know, reading about the presidents was in the beginning how, you know, many of the founders thought they never wanted a party system like we have now.
That was
They
correct.
never thought there were going to be parties, right? And the parties seem to naturally form, I'll say,
Yep.
right? And it just, I think it's almost human instinct, right? Human nature to say, how can we win? We'll bring as many of us together on the same side to be able to win, right? And that's where I see it in a republic like ours. I don't see us getting away from a two-party system. If a third-party candidate comes in, let's say it's libertarian, and they get a ton of votes, you know, however many years from now, right? And they grow to be very powerful. It will then be, well, which party is going to be shed? Are the Republicans going to be shed, or are the Democrats going to be shed? and then it will turn back into a two-party system with the libertarians and the
Well, you don't have to worry about
Democrats.
libertarians doing that because the Party of Anarchy can't even ever get its own act together. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's very true. They put up a bad candidate this year too.
well, and it was in typical libertarian fashion. The party can't get behind itself, you
Right.
know, and so yeah, there wasn't even a shot this year.
It is cool to see things happening like Trump going to the Libertarian convention though.
Yes,
You know, like that's a good move. Like
I kind of thought so too.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about something that I think is pretty important that's happened since May when you did your last podcast. Because since then, there's been 2 attempts on a president, a former president of the United
It's
States.
unbelievable.
And I guess what does that say about just the state of our country?
I heard there was a third too now, or at least one that was busted up. That was Iran driven.
Iran's, yeah, and there's there's basically a dollar amount on his head. You know, here's the thing. Sadly, and even after this second attempt, it's kind of been brushed under the rug by most mainstream media, obviously, and it's almost like desensitized. You know, like, oh, it's just another attempt. You know, it wasn't. Nothing was made much of it. I mean, it just goes to show you that whether it's Secret Service or whatever the fails are in the process, but boy, you go back to Reagan. Reagan was shot in, was that March or was it May? I always forget. March or May of '81. Anyways, the year I was born. And he damn near lost his life when Reagan got shot. It wasn't like, you know, he got shot in the shoulder. Like, he could have died for real. Prior to that, yeah, you had Kennedy, and I really firmly believe the DOJ was in on that one. I think they actually made that thing happen. And then you had, of course, Lincoln. But this is 2 attempts in 60 days. I mean, and people, and you got people rooting for it. That's
Yeah.
the other crazy part.
My take on this is I'm a Trump supporter. I wore a MAGA hat golfing today.
What happened?
Actually, 5 different people came up to me and said, "I like your hat."
And then they ran away because they didn't want to get caught. So that.
And I did not get any weird looks from anybody or anything else. It's
Yeah.
very odd how people will come up to you and I like your hat, man. I just want you to know that. But so I'm just setting that stage because I will say that everyone is talking about it, how everyone needs to turn down the rhetoric, right? I think Trump did a great disservice to this country by being as blunt and crude as what he is, because I think that level of crudeness then makes others act the same. I mean, fight fire with fire, right? And before Trump, you know, it was different. I mean, there was definitely more. What's the right word?
Civility.
I was just gonna say
civility,
civility,
in politics.
Yeah.
Not to say that there hadn't been terrible mudslinging in the past, because that's also something I've been reading about recently, where like even in their 4th and 5th presidential elections, mudslinging was awful. These guys were printing just pure lies about each other in the papers about infidelity and, you know, all this shit.
I think
right?
it has ebbed and flowed. You know, it's
Right.
just-
But I mean, I think Trump's rhetoric has caused the rhetoric of the entire country to go to shit. And this is because of that. And there's fucking crazy people out there that do really crazy things, and people will work off those messages.
Well, and I think the other thing that I'll get this out there just since we're being transparent. So as an independent voter, I've voted, you know, every which way over my lifetime. So I'm even though I've voted Libertarian the last couple times, I would, you know, say I'm generally independent because, you know, I kind of have to pick and choose whatever is out there, right? And don't always feel comfortable with the choice, but there was something I saw that I don't know has been covered all that much. After the first assassination attempt, I watched both conventions, at least in part, both of them. And the man I saw walk out on the stage at that convention was different. You know, I think that this assassination attempt did have an impact on Trump.
Yeah.
And I think it may be a positive one. Maybe. Time will tell. I also have a lot, so the last election, I was very anti-Trump, but I'm still not a huge fan because I think he's an entertainer. I think largely he's an entertainer and a businessman. Not bad things. Don't know if that's the right person to have for president, but the fact that his life has nearly been taken twice, and what I'm hearing from him now is more policy-based. It's, you know, hey, I'm going to partner with RFK. Here's what we're going to do together.
I like that a
I'm going
lot.
to partner with
Tulsi.
Tulsi.
Oh, I like
and
her.
here's some of the stuff that we're going to work on together. I'm going to engage with Vivek. And what's interesting is all these people, none of them agree about some major issues.
Correct.
But they're deciding what's important right now, and they're going to go drive action on it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying to listen to both sides, read both platforms, and I still don't know what the Democrats are about. As an independent, their message is completely lost on me as far as what are the actual things you're going to do.
But they do that on purpose. I really do believe they have no interest in actually explaining a thing until they have their position in power, and then they just take action for more progressive measures, which is just federal government involvement in a variety of ways, and they leave it at that. And then it's pass the baton to the next clown.
I think the Democratic Party has really changed from. I think it has a ton of traits of what the old Republican Party looked like, right?
It's flipped.
Yeah, I mean the neocon, warmongers are now the Democrat Party.
Completely
Which is
proxy wars.
weird,
Dude. It's so messed up.
Like they're all for us. The last debate, the question that David Muir was, I think it was David, or maybe it was Lindsay.
It was probably
pressing-
David because she barely spoke.
Well, one that they were pressing Trump on
Yeah.
is, do you want Ukraine to win? Do you want Ukraine to win?
That's a
Right, and
terrible
they asked
question
him-
to ask, by
Well,
the way.
Exactly.
It's a terrible question because it's a trap question, and it's also closed-ended. It's either yes or no. It's like that's not even a question to ask. But yeah, that's a terrible question to ask.
And that's a question that the Democratic, nominee would say yes. I want
Correct.
you, and it's like, huh? And I think Trump, of all people, as much as people like him or hate him, I think he answered that appropriately. It's not about winning or losing. I care about the people that are dying over there, right? And I think that was a beautiful answer by the guy. But the parties have flipped a little bit. Like Bill Maher talks about this all the time. How the new, the Democratic Party now, it looks nothing like Democratic Party when he grew up. So
No, it has changed wildly. It really has. Yeah, and you look at the party of the working people, if you will, very much conservative, Republican aligned, if you will. The liberal side, boy, it's the elites, it's the academics, it's the institutions, and it's the other group of the country that they don't mind the federal government taking over their lives. They're okay. They're okay with federal government being mom and dad.
Brian, why do you think 2 assassination attempts have occurred within the last 60 days? What's your take on why that's happening right now?
So there's my gut reaction, and then it's really hard to put your finger on it, but when
That's what she said.
Oh, dude.
come on, man. When a person, now granted, to your point, Trump's rhetoric has landed him somewhat in this position. So he's in some ways, he's made his own bed. But when a person is demonized to the point of being said that they are a threat to our democracy over and over and over again, and it's similar like the sound bites you guys were talking
Yeah.
about, where it gets kind of mass produced and pushed out all over the place. There are people who are going to take that and they're going to swallow it. They're not going to go. They're not going to go seek out all the information, invest the time, which a lot of people just don't have, or they're just wasting it, doom scrolling and getting, fed back whatever they have already heard before. And the fringe is going to act.
Yeah.
And I think, so two things kind of swayed me to lean towards voting for Trump this election. One, well, a couple things. One, libertarians don't have a shot because they can't get their act together this cycle, and it's kind of rigged against them. But the way Trump has responded to these pretty dramatic events and threats on his life, I think, has said more about his character than what I understood it to be before. Even though the way he talks, I still don't like it. But at the same time, I've sought out other things to see how he interacts with voters. And some of those really, like, when Trump just gets in a room with a handful of people who want to meet him and want to talk to him,
He's cool.
the way he engages with them is not something I see from the other side.
It's because it's awkward for them.
It looks awkward.
It's so
right?
cringe. It's strange.
But so anyway, I get this sense of, he's not a perfect man. He probably thinks he's more perfect than he is. At least that's how his attitude comes off. But he's had a lot of success, so I guess maybe that's okay. But on the other side, so I'm about halfway, 3/4 through this that production with Oprah and Kamala, and I say production because that's what I'm feeling.
Okay.
It feels scripted. There's a lot of very wealthy people that are very famous, kind of talking the talk. But I haven't yet heard any policy position other than we are going to pay you. We're gonna pay a handful of you some money to win. I guess that's what I'm hearing is to win this election. And they're even, and to an extent it affects me because as a new small business owner, it's like, oh, hey, they're gonna cut me a check,
Right.
For $50,000.
Are my values worth that or
That's
not?
the deal.
And but that's
The
what
deal with the devil.
that's what people are going to struggle with is
Correct.
is okay, I'm at risk of losing my business and they're going to cut me a check that might allow me to save my business at least for a couple more years, even though a lot of the reasons my business is failing might be because of the taxes and regulations and all the other stuff that they've put on me.
Correct.
So it's nefarious. And that's the piece of it that scares me a bit. So
I've always wondered, do you think there's some way to get that vote buying out of the process, right? And like Trump does it too, right? I mean, politicians do it all the time. J.D. Vance says we're going to, go and give every family a $5,000 tax credit. Then Kamala says, we're going to give them a $6,000 tax credit. And then we're going to, pay for your student loans. We're going to give you $25,000 toward a down payment on a house. We're going to give you $50,000 for a small business.
The only way you get rid of it is if they eliminate taxes, because then they don't have our money.
well, they've got to reduce the spending, right?
Yeah.
And that's the piece that I think has gotten lost in the whole conversation is when they say, hey, they're going to cut me a check for $25,000 because I'm a small business owner. Well, where's that money coming from?
Right.
Exactly.
Because and that gets to the debt. We talk about Ross Perot, our new hero, our old hero, and he did call it. And there is a real danger to our republic that's in our lifetimes.
Oh, I think it's a ticking time bomb.
And all three of us have kids, right?
Yeah.
And we are this nation is still the greatest nation on earth, and it still has the greatest promise of any nation on earth. But we are on the verge of squandering it.
Yeah.
I even even the stock market scares the heck out of me because when you look at the gross imbalance of some of these companies are valued so high compared to earnings. It's unprecedented in our history. And I forget, what is it? Something like, it's a big percentage of one of the stock markets is in 10 companies, of the hundreds of companies that are in it. And federal government policy does play a role in some of this
Yes, they do.
stuff. So it's not really a free market anymore either. So I don't know. It's kind of like the Jenga set, and there's been these blocks pulled out long enough and stacked on top, and it just doesn't look real stable anymore. And we're not going to know it until it's too late.
Government. Go ahead.
Somebody that last, we started texting after that last debate. You'd said, what do you think about the debate? And one of the things I said back is somebody else said, and this was not my thought, somebody else's was that prior to this election, and maybe, I don't know if it happened even last election, but the debates all used to be, they used to have a focus. They used to be, the first debate's going to be on the economy. The second debate's going to be on foreign policy.
yeah.
The third debate's going to be on, C. And now, your comment about Trump and like more of an entertainer, right? That's almost what the debates now seem to be like. What clickbait,
It's reality TV.
Gotcha
of the worst kind.
right? Is the debate going to be, and how can we get people watching, right? Where that's where we should be able to get that information that you're talking about, Brian, right? I mean, when it comes to policy of, yeah, okay, Kamala, how are you going to pay for every one of these things that you put out? There's an economist that sits there and goes, calculates the numbers. Hey, that's going to cost $5 trillion in 10
Right.
years. Where do you expect to get that money from?
That's just it. I mean, it's it's bad math. It's empty promises. It's under delivering. It's anything to just get someone to vote for you.
And this tax the rich and tax billionaires is such bullshit.
It
If
is.
anyone knows
Pay-
anything about the economy, you're not going to get much from taxing more from billionaires.
Pay
You're not.
pay their fair share. It's the same thing, the big corporations, and the big billionaires, pay their fair share. It's just silliness, and people who hear that, some people hear that think, yeah, get the billionaire,
Eat the rich.
Yeah.
They protect them. The people that make the most have the most already. It's just it's a silliness factor, and yet people buy it hook, line, and sinker.
Have you guys watched any of Chris Cuomo's recent stuff?
Yeah. Oh, he's like completely flipped.
Well, and not completely. I mean, he's still very much clearly not a fan of Trump, which I'm okay with.
I
Is he,
thought he
st- is he
just came
still
out
is he
saying he
still
was.
arm wrestling people or whatever?
I don't think he's
You
doing
know-
that.
You know what I'm
but
talking about, or no? Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
no, I don't.
Okay.
But it was interesting because he was at the Democratic convention, and he's on the floor of the convention, and he's talking about how hypocritical, as he's looking around the room, and they're talking about, like the platform is talking about, the working man and,
Yeah, right.
and all this stuff, and he's saying, do you realize that suite? I forget the numbers. I don't know the numbers, but it was insane amounts, like millions of dollars
Sure.
to look in that suite. And you look at the suite and you see who's in there, and all the people they're talking about eating, eat the rich, they're all in the room.
Yeah.
Like all the most wealthiest people in the country,
Correct.
world are in the room, in those suites. And the thing that jumped into my head is, do you guys remember the Hunger Games movies?
Never
And
saw.
did you ever
them.
read the books? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the picture that jumped in my mind. And in that movie, like
Yep.
they parodied like what this elite class, would look like and behave like, and that's what jumped into my head.
What was so laughable too is you got stupid Bernie Sanders. This guy is literally just the in the depths of the gutter of just trash politicians. And Bernie Sanders, he goes up there and he's touting again. It's the same nonsense about, pay their fair share, tax the billionaires, go after the rich, we're going to help everybody out, blah, blah, blah. And then he introduces, guess who? J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, whose family is worth billions of dollars. The same governor who stripped the toilets out of a mansion so he wouldn't have to pay the full boat of property taxes because it was deemed uninhabitable, and then re-put the toilets back in right before he had to sell the property so he could make a tidy profit.
I didn't know that.
Oh, look it up. It's a great story. The Hamburglar himself, because he looks like the Hamburglar. But yeah, big fat J.B. Pritzker, this clown dude. And Bernie Sanders introduces him shortly after trashing billionaires and all those people, the greedy types. And you got Pritzker, whose family is worth, I don't even know how many billions, but, they're incredibly wealthy.
Yeah, it feels hypocritical. Now, at the same time, I forget. It'd be interesting if we could get to the statistics, but the wealthiest people in our country do pay a huge percentage of the taxes. So
But how much more are you going to make them pay?
Well, I get, but my point is that people think they're not paying any taxes, and
Oh, they pay a chunk, but
you know, money that we can't even comprehend, they're already paying the federal government in taxes.
the one thing is much of their income, though, it's not earned. It's not like they work for you know what I mean? They're not taxed at the same rates in many
Yeah.
cases. You know, it's
It's net. It's not netting. What was the word is escaping me right here live on TV here. Their net worth. Their net worth is really high.
correct.
But it's not like they're drawing a salary that's potentially really big.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
There we go. Right. So the top 1% of earners in the country pay 40% of all federal income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The top 5% pay all 60. The top 10% pay all 70. The top 25% pay 86% of federal income taxes.
And decide how it's spent.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Who decides? What do you mean?
I mean, when you think about that, it's no wonder why
Oh, yeah.
those people who have that kind of money
You're
get
right.
to decide how their money is spent.
Correct. Into what causes and such. Yeah.
So I look at those numbers and I think it's really not our federal government anyway.
it's not,
Right.
and it's not equal representation
Yeah.
either because it's the money. Who it's coming from?
Wow. I didn't realize the numbers were that big.
Well, and the Democrat Party likes to play to the poor people, right, and say you shouldn't be paying as much taxes. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that the majority of poor people pay absolutely no federal taxes.
That's correct. They pay, and they actually, in many cases, get a refund somehow.
Right. And
They do.
I think people just are not informed enough to understand and realize that. And that's scary.
I feel uninformed having now seen this. I knew it was a big ratio, like that but 25% of earners pay 86%. That's wild.
That's wild, right? So 75% of the earners, of the population of earners, we'll say, pay only 14% of federal income. That's nothing. That's nothing. So, yeah, it's a game. It's a
How much does Puff Daddy pay? P. Diddy.
how much does 1,000 bottles of lube cost?
Jeez. what a segue. I don't think he's gonna make it out alive.
I think he's gonna be
He'll be Epstein.
Epsteined.
Oh,
Yep.
totally.
Yep, for sure.
Magically, the cameras will be turned off. The guy falls asleep, and somehow he's found dead in his cell. Somehow.
Yeah. Unless there's not that many powerful people that are on the list, and it's just rappers and performing artists, then it probably won't happen. But you wanted to talk a little bit about the pager bombing. Right?
That's slick.
So it's funny because
What the heck, man? Who somebody educate me on this, because I read the story and I was enamored with how basically badass this thing got pulled off. However they designed it so that this thing would actually go and do what it did.
Yeah, I've actually been struggling with this one just because it's an escalation in a way that just really kind of scares me. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. I've seen two arguments. One is, if this happened in the United States, it would be seen as a terrorist attack.
Completely.
Right? So, one could argue that these are acts of terror, but they are in a war. I think that's something that we sometimes forget, is that Israel is in a state of war with these organizations.
It happened in Lebanon, right? Or the majority of them? Is that right?
It was it Hezbollah? I think.
Yeah, I know it was
Isn't
Hezbollah,
it?
the group.
But I think it was in Lebanon, yeah. But it was
Yeah.
elsewhere. I think it was pretty widespread because these things were all over the place.
300 pagers, or what was the number?
But, I think it was
Well, it was
hundreds
thousands.
of
I
radios,
think
but
it
it
was
was thousands of pagers.
Thousands of
I
oh
think,
my
or
gosh,
it was
okay.
like something like 900 or 1,000 or something like that. But
how is it sourced?
sourced in Asia, somewhere.
Taiwan.
Obviously,
Taiwan.
Obviously, the recipients were planning on receiving these, but they were already rigged. Yes.
No,
They-
well,
They believe they intercepted them.
Intercepted them. Thank you.
The Israel government intercepted them from Taiwan.
Allegedly, they
Oh,
have not
right.
claimed
Of course, yeah.
responsibility.
No one's going to claim
America's thrown them under
Oh,
the bus.
I
All
thought
I
Israel
know-
claimed
No,
it. Oh, they haven't?
America
All-
threw them under the bus. They did not claim
that.
responsibility.
Well, all I know is the three of us in this room have nothing to do with it.
yes,
So,
yes.
But to your,
But at
to
the
your
same-
thing, like it would be terrorism,
Well,
right?
that's one
if we had
perspective.
Hezbollah people here in the United States, I don't think we call it terrorism.
No, and I think that's the other argument is that
Oh,
they're
we-
in a state of war.
newcomers.
This was about as precision an attack as you could make to limit the risk to civilians. Even though, I mean, there were civilians
Yeah,
that
casualties.
were killed or injured, and so I don't know. I'm still struggling with it a bit because
the whole thing is really amazing. I'm not trying to say that this is like awesome. Like I'm saying amazing in the sense of how it just got done. Like that's crafty.
It's smart.
It's
And-
ridiculously crafty.
I don't know if this
However-
is true or not, but what I heard was that there was a timer and a delay on them, so they would, when they'd make the call to set the page to set the detonation, they would actually get a page, so that they would
It
take
looked-
it
it
off
looked
their
real.
belt and put it up to their face for the point of these things blowing up in their face
That's
rather than on their hip. So like
that's
that's crazy, right? Like to think, oh shit, a page, and then boom, and that was a plan. I say, wow, that wowed me, right? And I don't think there were that many deaths that actually came from it, but a ton of injuries, thousands of injuries, and somebody else made the point of like, yeah, but you did that, and it didn't matter where these people were, right? They could have been standing next to a baby that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with Hezbollah, right? And
Well,
it's,
yeah.
as far as I think the thing that it did do though was it probably severely disrupted their operations for a
scared
time.
the shit out of them, I bet.
Well, I'm guessing it probably made them more mad than it.
Oh, you think
did
the
scare
next
the-
day they weren't scared to answer their cell phones?
Yeah,
That's
a
just
fair
it,
point.
yeah,
None of them have them though. The reason they were using these devices was because
Whatever
they
it
were,
may be.
Yeah.
They were
Whatever
afraid
it may
'cause
be.
they were afraid that
because they don't
Israel-
communicate by cell phone, do
Yeah.
they? No, they
Yeah,
don't.
no, because they're worried that Israel will
Tracing.
intercept it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was a lot of people are reacting like the way you are, Tim, which is wow. That was really well executed.
Like it's crazy slick. I mean,
But I guess would just I don't know. I mean, it's it was like a precision nuclear bomb. Instead of I mean,
Yeah.
hitting a lot of targets all at once. But I don't know. It just felt like an escalation on a level that makes me a little nervous because if they learned how to do it, others are going to learn how to do
That's
it.
the other
it's going to
thing.
be used for things we aren't going to like.
that's the other thing, and you're right because
And have they lost the moral high ground? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was somebody on X came out. I think it might have been like Candace Owens or something like that, and said like this was awful. That was done by, it was done around bystanders. This was an act of war that shouldn't have occurred or something like this, right? And then Ben Shapiro came back and said, this was if you mean the most precise attack that has ever been done in war, then yeah, you call that bad. But essentially trying to retort and say like. This was so precise. It was better than any other type of violence, that could have happened, which I kind of agree with.
Well, and
Y-
that's what's kind of swayed me is then you contrast that with Gaza
right.
and tens of thousands of civilians in what was really in some ways, some have argued, a very controlled, to an extent, controlled reaction because it's not like they just carpet bombed the entire city. They tried to get as many civilians out as possible. They told them, hey, by the way, we're going to bomb this building in about 4 hours exactly.
yeah, they announced that.
Get your civilians out. The devastation that you see in Gaza, this didn't do that.
Correct.
It disrupted their command and control and took a bunch of what we probably would consider bad guys out with a handful of civilian injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. It's I think the reason it feels concerning or something is because it is different. Nothing quite like that has been done before, except in
Yeah.
a James Bond movie.
That's what I'm saying. It's like something out of Hollywood. It's
Yeah.
almost like, you conjure it up, but it's never actually done.
But what door has been opened?
That's
You know?
just it, because now you've created a new way, method, planning, right? Something that's just different, and can be done in a very sneaky way.
Yeah, what's next? Apples?
That's what I'm saying. Like yeah, exactly. The produce at a store or something like that.
Well,
you
and
know?
where are they made? How much control do we have over that
Yeah.
supply chain? Where are most of them sold and purchased? And I don't know. It's a scary proposition.
Yeah, I would, that entire
So-
war is incredibly hard because it's hard to take a stance on either side. I mean, I almost want to be like, just leave me out of it, man. Like, it has nothing to do with me. Leave me out of it. I don't want to take a stand on either side. I mean, obviously, we know who the bad guys are, right? Like Hezbollah and Hamas, right? We know they're bad people for going in and killing 1,700 people on that day. But the overall conflict of Palestinians and Israel, I mean, I have a very hard time with that. I think the odd thing is there was tons of support for Israel across the board, prior to that, and now I see a ton of people online almost flipping to the Israel is not as good as you think they are, and they're very, they're bad for all of these reasons, and then starting to call out like the leaders of Israel right now are the most far right leaders that Israel has had in the longest time, and there's even protests going on within Israel against their own government for taking things too far. So I don't know. I'm not intelligent enough. I'm not smart enough on these topics to have a really great opinion.
Well, we're so far removed from it.
And do we know if we're getting fed the right information?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I do think that it's going to end up escalating even more, though. It's going to keep going. It really is. I don't see an end in sight. Not near term.
I mean, I think it's really scary.
I mean, it is. And when you consider the irony in the whole thing, the most holy of lands in all of the world is the most war-torn. It's kind of the irony in the whole thing. I mean, really, when you think about it. And
it's always been that way.
it has been for thousands of years. It has been, So I guess if you want to blame anybody, blame Abraham for creating 3 monotheistic religions through his children. And then you have to go after Ishmael and Isaac. Anyways.
Yeah, it's that war is scary. The war in Ukraine, Russia is scary. Have you guys seen some of the videos that I don't know who's putting them out, but they're circulating online about of Putin and what Putin is saying about the United States and what he said. I mean, things like, guys, after the fall of the Soviet Union and with him there, he wanted to join NATO, right? He wanted to do these things. And like, he's saying essentially like, I have no problem with America as long as, we keep our boundaries with one another and let's work together and let's be, let's trade and let's do all of these things. And again, I get put back to that place of, I don't know what's being fed to me, if it's real or if it's not, but a lot of what I hear this guy saying sounds incredibly sensible. And I don't know if that's like propaganda playing to me or if I'm a fool for thinking about that, but
It's
I go
probably somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But I do think, again, I'd encourage you both to, before the next time we get together, which I assume we're going to do this again sometime, is listen to that Vivek Ramaswamy interview with Lex Friedman. It's long, but he talked about this topic and probably gave more away in what Trump has not wanted to talk about. It was like he doesn't want to talk about his plans for ending the war. But I do think it kind of gave me some insight into, I think there is a plan, and it sounds like a potentially sensible one, to your point. But I'm encouraged that there is a desire to negotiate, not just put more money and weapons over there so more people die
That needs
and
to stop.
escalate the situation.
And
Because
now they're going into Russia. Now they're invading Russia. I mean,
well, and the
Ukraine.
reason they're invading is because we gave them, which I believe I'm okay with this. I mean, being a libertarian, I'm not a big fan of foreign wars where I don't quite see the like what is done look like. Like what
Right.
is
What's-
the mission?
What's the end game?
Yeah, what is the mission of and by the way, we're not really at war. Congress has not declared war,
No, it's a proxy.
and
which should be completely illegal at some point. There has to be some barriers put around that, some rails put around that, so this stuff doesn't just, Kamala can go on stage and, we're not in any wars whatsoever. No one has died and all this kind of shit.
Oh, it's such a
Oh,
lie.
come on,
that was she stuck her foot in her mouth a little bit on that one because it got debunked by soldiers over the world pretty quick.
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the reason I bring up that interview is because they talk about they basically talk about scenarios like what are some of the options? How could you negotiate your way out of this?
Mhm.
And it was he had some interesting ideas.
Yeah. I don't know what that's going to be, but, the atomic clock, right, is the doomsday
Mhm.
clock.
Doomsday
right?
clock, yeah.
What they call it is closer than ever, and that scares the shit out of me. I mean,
Well, and Russia's a little bit ahead of the game on us at this point on supersonic.
are they?
Mm-hmm. They've tested supersonic. We have not, so they could theoretically drop a warhead on us before we even know it's coming.
And our president has 6 minutes to decide. President Biden, by the way.
He's napping on the beach, though.
That's crazy to me too. Crazy. 6 minutes for Biden.
Cut the malarkey.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Why'd you have to do that to us? Oh yeah. Should we, guys? We're going on 2 hours. 2 hours. And
Yeah,
10
2 hours,
7
minutes.
minutes. It is-
Time
Yeah.
flies when you're having fun, I guess.
Yeah.
So one thing I'll tee up just to plant a seed for next time. Something you'll hear in that podcast is Vivek's answer to the establishment. And
I'd like to hear what that is. Yeah.
so the summary, if I can paraphrase a much longer conversation into something really short. You start with 50% of every employee in the federal government.
Getting rid of.
If your social security number ends in a 2 or an even number, you're gone. If it ends in an odd number, you stay.
Mm.
And then you do it a second time to reduce the entire federal government by 75%.
Ooh, sassy. I like it.
And what happens? What is the implication of removing a huge portion of the bureaucracy and then figuring out what's important to keep and figure out how to fund that?
Isn't that very similar to what who is it? The guy in, I'm gonna get this wrong, Portugal or one of the South American countries, that new president that came.
Oh,
in.
Argentina.
He just
yeah,
deleted
thank
the
you.
departments entirely.
Yeah, he was
He
just
did.
like this gone.
He
it's
just-
gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
He that guy. He's up there with Ross Perot and Jesus too.
And apparently things are getting a lot better.
Dude, he is turning it around overnight.
Like it got
and,
worse, but then now it's
Yeah.
getting very
Yeah.
much better.
Like their inflation is like inflation we've never even seen before. It's in the hundreds, if not thousands of percents. And that has been totally been getting squashed down too because they're just not going to spend the money.
Well, they don't want to know that it could be that there is some
Yeah.
potential success there, and he's not suggesting it's a good idea necessarily. It's it was an interesting discussion because it was like, okay, I mean, you're left with a whole bunch of really bad options.
Drastic times
mean,
call for drastic measures.
People
and
do
it's
that
one
in
of them.
business though, and it turns out to not really work too. Like we need to drastically cut our costs. What should we do? Well, let's take instead of going precision and taking the precision approach of cutting, let's go across the board and cut 30% of the employees, and then it's just shit
Mayhem.
afterward. Mayhem, right? So I don't know. Like it's one of those things where it's like, maybe.
And then you look at X,
well,
Elon's
smarter than most leaders, though. I would
that's
say.
true. That's true, but it didn't go smooth.
Yeah,
But it
there's
appears to
truth
be a
that.
stronger organization and doing potentially more good and more harm. But it's doing what it intended to do. The mission was free speech, town hall,
Right.
Completely.
and a simple vision, simple mission, and you figure what 75% of them were doing censorship probably anyway. So
Oh yeah,
One of
totally.
the greatest interviews ever was when Elon was being interviewed by some guy on stage and for some forum, and the guy said, "Well, what about your revenue? Aren't you worried about the revenue from your advertisers that are going to leave because of the stances that you're taking?" And he's just like, "I'll tell them to fuck off. Fuck off. I don't need your money. Fuck off." And it was just like, holy shit, that is the coolest thing that I've ever
Yeah.
heard.
well,
come from
it's a
somebody like
values
that.
it's a values based decision.
Right.
He's decided that free speech is more important than money.
Correct. And actually, the belief is that the value of the company, regardless of its revenue, is actually worth more now than when he bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the value, the intrinsic value alone of just being that wide open, that has incredible value. And
Yeah.
you almost can't put a price on it. We'll see though.
You're saying like the value you think is much higher than the stock value.
Completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually the case, because truth be told, there's probably a very, very high price that people would be willing to pay just to put it back in the original format of being censored. You know what I mean? Because it's too valuable.
Mark
now.
Cuban
Do
wanted
you
to do
understand
that.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the value is in the free speech piece, which I don't even know if you can quantify.
Yeah, it is interesting.
'Cause-
All right, guys.
I was gonna say, what did he pay for it?
44
44
44 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe somebody would be willing to pay 200 billion just to shut it down. You get my drift?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Well, that's probably definitely true. And I think it was funny because it was like a week ago, Cuban came out and said like, I'd buy X and I'd buy Fox and all this kind of, or he wanted to, and it's like,
Yeah.
Cuban, you're worth $5 billion, dude. You're not worth the 200 billion that Musk is.
Did you see that somebody predicted Musk will be the first trillionaire in the next
did, yeah.
period of years?
Because his growth rate's like 100-some% a year, or whatever it is.
The next event that he has coming up is on October 10th. And
He's joining us?
that'd be fucking slick if he did.
Could you imagine, dude?
No, it was like,
Elon, stop in New Berlin.
I'm
If you know
trying
what
to
that is.
search for somebody, and here I am, like, gonna.
Have you used a
tweet
computer
something
before?
out. I know, right?
Control Alt Delete.
Econ, come on, come on,
This is
buddy.
entertaining to watch you try and type in real time.
Where is it? It's 1010, and it said just like AI something, but 1010 is their next event, and there's a ton of question around it, whether it's like going to be about Optimus, or if it's going to be about full autonomy in the vehicles, or what it's going to be. I can't find the tweet right now for some reason, but 1010 is the next.
You got to go to
huge-
posts, not replies.
Yeah, that's where I was just at.
Oh,
Like, not much changed here. Rogan is absolutely right. It was just this morning that I saw it. But then again, Elon Musk tweets like every 2 hours.
That dude's spooky. That's Sam Altman,
He's-
the AI guy. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
He's
Oh, right
strange.
here.
Like he actually scares me, especially when they interview him.
Yeah, so his tweet says,
a wee robot.